And good evening, everyone. TJ Altai 45 now. Welcome to the runoff edition of our forums. So we take a look at one of two races in our coverage area that are heading to a runoff on December 6th. This is by far the biggest one, and that is for Council Position 7 in League City between Saunders, who squeaked out, I guess, having the top number of votes there just by percentage points against Larissa Rameriz, who came in second place there. Neither one getting more than 50% of the vote. So we are headed to a runoff. Early voting on this election will start on the 28th. So get to have some turkey, some rest, and then the two of you hit back to the polls again right away. Sean, Larissa, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you.
Thank you, TJ.
Thank you, TJ.
And those of you who've watched what we did earlier, we did get one-on-ones with the candidates this time, a little bit different of our formats. We were glad to be able to at least the candidates accommodate us on that one. This time around, we do want to have the two candidates in the room here. Our format, as it normally is, this is a question and answer session that we go through the whole time. And it's not like your normal debates in which we're going to go ahead and put someone on the clock and say you only have 30 seconds to answer here. We're going to have a discussion, try to get as many topics as we can here in the next 45 minutes or so. Then each candidate gets to have about 3 minutes to give their final pitch. Let's start off with this, though, right off the bat. And Larissa, I'll start with you on this one. What's the top issues for you as you seek to be elected to League City Council?
Well, when I have recently been speaking with a lot of citizens of League City, we talk about the obvious things like drainage, safety, of course, especially with our especially with crime rates increasing in Harris County and in other areas. That's a huge topic. But one of the real concerns that I've noticed while speaking to everybody has been transparency. Transparency overall in our local government. A lot of people just didn't know what kind of topics were going to be voted on. Huge topics that they'd like to know. And so that was a huge one just in my recent conversation with citizens of League City.
And Sean, let me ask you, same question for you. What's going to be the top issue for you as you seek to make it on council?
TJ, a lot of people I talk to, I've heard transparency. A lot more that I'm hearing about is always the traffic issues we have, whether they are textile oriented or city oriented, due to the growth that we've had, exponential growth that we're currently going through. The traffic and mobility issues getting from east to west, north to south, seems to be the biggest issue I've had people tell me about. I think we need to do a much better job than we've been doing, to be honest.
One of the things, folks, just so you are aware of this right now, is that Sean's got a little bit of an issue with his internet there. So that's why you're seeing somewhat and you'll cut out. We will always give a chance for a full answer to come out there. Let me start with, since both of you brought up different issues here. Let me start with you on that, Sean, since that's our first question kind of talk about is dealing with traffic issues in particularly. What's the top mobility issue you want to address if elected to council? What do you think needs to be tackled first?
Well, first of all, we need to start working on coordination with TxDOT and doing a better job of coordinate with them and road closures so that people can get through our town. With them owning every major thoroughfare through our town, then we're kind of in a bind anytime they decide they want to shut something down. And we need to do a better job as a city coordinating with them on how they're doing it so that it doesn't hinder our citizens more than it already is. We also need to be looking at not just east and west accesses. We also need to be looking at north and south accesses. Hobbs Road coming up to 517. There's still some concern exactly how they're going to tie that in. It's supposed to go out to 517, but it's not going to be in alignment with the cemetery. So the problem is 517 is TxDOT, then you have cemetery, and that whole area there, the land belongs to Dickinson. So when we start looking at mobility, we got to start working with these other entities and start putting some responsibility back on them to assist us in improving these items. The landing extension coming around from National Road 1, I recently met with several homeowners who live on the north side of Clear Creek in the Harris County portion of League City. And this was a topic that was brought up. When we come around with that, I'd like to see us also include a roundabout in that, which I believe is already planned, but have access from there over to Grissom Road so that citizens that live in that area of town can access the freeway a lot easier than trying to go through National Water 518. It'll also allow the traffic from the stadium not to be going through the neighborhoods and give them another way to get out to 45 also. We need to start looking at, let's go to another one, 96 going out to 96 out to 35. I believe city is talking to Friendswood, but we need to make sure we have that shored up so that when it gets to the point that we need Friendswood to get involved in it, we're not going to be a roadblock and say, well, it is what it is. We're just got to deal with it. That's 2 or 3 of the things that I've seen so far that we need to be doing a better job on.
Let me ask you though. It's easy to say, hey, we need to do a better job on and get these done. But let me ask you as a follow up to that, Sean. As a council member, you'll have one vote on there. You'll have to be part of adopting policy. What do you propose to do as a council member to make sure those issues get taken care of?
Well, first of all, we need to be looking at making sure the city is doing matching funds with TxDOT, seeing what we need to do on our end to make these projects happen, whether it's TxDOT, Friendswood 517, or 96 out to 517, or Hobbs down to 517. We need to make sure we're doing our part also. I'm sorry, my internet's acting up again here. Can y'all still see me?
You're clear. You're clear right now.
Yeah. So we need to make sure we're doing our side and directing our city management and our city departments to stay on top of it. As a council member, again, does the projects require that we have some kind of matching funds, that we're just not saying, hey, go do this, it's on your dime, and us not being chipping in also? We're going to be using the roadway, so if we are required to do some kind of matching funds, we need to find the money to make sure we're doing it. As a council member, that's my job, is as a council to direct the city manager to follow through and do his job along with his department heads.
Because we could talk about, as we came on the air here, and for those of you just joining us, we have Larissa, Rameriz, and Sean Saunders through the candidates for League City Council position 7 in the runoff. The early voting on that starts the 28th. That's next week. And then the runoff election day is December 6th. So where you're out and about doing your Christmas shopping or holiday shopping, as it may be, you may want to take advantage of the early voting year. But one of our viewers, as soon as we came on, when I asked y'all each what your top issues were, he came in and chimed in traffic. So Larissa, let me ask you the same question I just got finished asking Sean. It is, if elected to council, we all know that, there's things that need to be done, but if elected to council, how do you make sure that these are done and those projects that are priorities? And as Sean mentions, the communication with TxDOT improves to the point that you can then relay that to the residents of League City.
Yeah, no, that is definitely the number one issue that we can all agree on is traffic. It is imperative that we are able to get out of our actual city during a time of hurricane or storm. I mean, the other day it was just raining. It was just a rainstorm. And with the overall construction throughout the city, there were cars that had to pull up into the gas stations just to get away from high water. So it is imperative that we, first of all, complete the bond projects, the projects that were initially set for that bond. I'm in construction management. I'm a construction management project. I'm a construction project manager, and part of my job is to make sure that we are using our resources within our funds and being able to push along those projects in a timely manner, right? And kind of being able to foresee some of those delays that could come up. And so early on in my candidacy, I met with the with our staff and with our city manager. And I kind of wanted to get a feel for what projects were being handled by TxDOT and what projects were being handled by our city, right? And so they were so helpful in kind of explaining what projects were handled by TxDOT versus what were handled by the city. And some of these projects that are being handled by TxDOT aren't solely handled 100% by TxDOT. We have some that our city has a hand in as well. So there are projects that maybe our city is handling the engineering portion of it, whereas TxDOT is handling the other portion of it or managing the project. So there are several projects that we currently work hand in hand with the city works hand in hand with TxDOT to push along. And those are going to be your major projects, the ones that are closer to, the major highways. Now, other projects, maybe some that are in some of just the streets or the neighboring streets, those are going to be handled solely by the city. And so it boils down to, and not that our staff isn't doing a great job, because they really are working hard, but it boils down to being able to, first of all, understand the complexity and who's handling the current projects now, identify ways to push those forward, and also take into consideration what's in the pipeline now and how that's going to affect everyone. Because ultimately, we want to be able to get out of our homes, should a disaster occur. Shoot, I want to be able to get out of my home just to go get to work at 8:00 on time, So as a council member, I plan to continue those efforts and have an understanding, work alongside with, and I know it's easier said than done, but work alongside with our city manager, with our staff, to make sure that we're taking a proactive attempt to identify those delays and push these current bond projects forward, complete them, while we have these other ones, coming up in rotation.
But along the way, it's one thing to kind of keep tabs on them, but there is, how do you then deal with, and I'll start with you, Larissa, and come back with the same question to you, Sean, is that, okay, delays are going to happen. We know that. And along the way, but what is the best way to handle that? You said at the top, Larissa, that you felt a lot of times people didn't know what was really going on. I'm not sure what more can be done to keep folks in the loop. I mean, I see constant updates coming from the city when there's road updates going on. They're on the agendas or on the websites or on the Facebook page. But how does that better get communicated then to, hey, this project is here and this is what our timeline is now? How is that not getting done now? And if it is getting done, how do you more effectively get that out to the public in general? I'll start with you, Larissa.
No, that's a great follow-up question. So they do list the projects out in our city manager update that we receive. And one of, and it says, okay, this is going to be closed. And then they also, League City staff does an amazing job at being able to publish those items on social media and what have you. But when I speak of transparency, earlier I speak of being able to maybe like a monthly, how you have your city managers update, maybe having a city council update, your monthly city council update on City Matters magazine and online, just to kind of give everyone an overview of what we're voting on. That's what I mean when I say
right. And I understood that. I'm talking about specifically on the road issues. We're going to come to that specific issue there a little bit later, but particularly what we're talking about is traffic here. That's a lot of times the most what we hear from folks is they're not, hey, I didn't know this road closure was happening, or why is this taking so long, or who is responsible? You went and asked who was responsible for certain projects and go on. And that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So being able to not only put that out on our social media, put that out on our magazines, but I think it would be, and this is just me not having having a lack of knowledge on how much an app would cost or anything like that developmental process. But I think it would be really neat to have incorporated in an app to where, similar to that of like Google or Waze, and be able to say, hey, League City, this is what our projected timeline, our traffic is. And I think it'd be nice to do something like that with this technology nowadays. We do everything in an app.
And same question to you, Sean. But let me, as I bring this up about about sharing that information, I'll share you something that is readily available to the public. It's something we get ourselves, and I know that the city gets. What you're looking at right there on your screen, the both of you, is this is a daily update. I know that every city around gets this. We get it as well, and it's just the I-45 update on what lane closures are going to be taking place. Now, this will be one way for a while, and then it changes up. But what happens a lot of times is, and Sean, since you talked about coordinating with TxDOT more, this is why I'm going to go to you on this question, is that, we'll get this information, and then all of a sudden we find out at 1 hour before it starts, it's changed now. It's not going to happen now. Or a closure happened that wasn't supposed to happen. And when we asked TxDOT about it, they said, well, the contractor decided to do that. And when Larissa pointed out later, it's not always 100% TxDOT or 100% the city. There's also a thing of who's responsible for doing the actual work on the ground. It's a contractor who is responsible. Even the public relations folks for the TxDOT doesn't even know sometimes, a lot of times on these major projects, what's about to happen. So how does that get fixed along the way? Go to you.
Real quick, TJ,
Larissa, let me go to Sean first. I'll let you come back on that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So one of the things with contractors is that we need to, I guess, incentivize or penalize these contractors for not doing their jobs and doing them properly. When these contractors do this kind of stuff, I really believe at times they feel like there's no repercussion to their actions. I do have to agree with what their TxDOT and the city saying that, hey, we were told this, and then all of a sudden now they're not doing this, and they decided, well, instead of doing that, we're going to do this instead. And they're not coordinating it with the city, or the city's not coordinating it with TxDOT or whatever. And we need to look at the contractor and say, hey, no, we have to run a city here. We have 120,000 plus people in this city that have to be able to get from point A to point B, period. We have to be able to help them. And the only way we can help them is to have the knowledge of what you're going to do. If you're saying you're going to do this, then you need to do it. If you're not going to do it, we need more than a day's notice so that we can get it out to our citizens, so the citizens have the ability to plan their lives accordingly. I've ran the same subject with our community center over here and the subcontractors. We hire somebody to do the job, i.e., TxDOT's going out and they're getting a primary project manager contracting company to do the job. That company is using subcontractors for all their different phases, whether it's concrete or prepping of the land or whatever. And when you do that and you start using these subcontractors and there's no penalty, honestly, in my heart, I don't think that they care. Whatever they want to do, they're going to do. And we as a city need to start looking at these contracts and say, hey, look, you've given us a 90-day time frame. If you're not done in 90 days, we're going to penalize you for every, let's say, week, month, some kind of time frame that you're going over, because we have to run a city and we have to help our citizens. And we can't do that if you're playing games.
Right. And
that has to stop.
And along the lines too, though, it comes into is how do you find that contract? I mean, if it's not a city contract, well, that, the incentives are written in are just like, hey, get done faster than anything else along the way is. So let you finish up that thought, Sean. Then Larissa, I'm gonna come back to you so you can finish your thought there. How do you hold whoever is accountable? As I said, TxDOT will announce, and it's one thing. Now people can understand weather coming in and stopping a project. Once that's announced, that's a last minute thing.
Right.
But to have something change at the last minute with no explanation sometimes. I mean, I know of times we've announced a closure for a week and then it gets canceled and we don't find out about it till the day after. TxDOT all of a sudden puts out a tweet and thinks that that's good enough. How do you hold that accountable if you're on council?
So as a council member, these contracts are running through TxDOT. Let's say I'm used 45 and 518 as a prime example. That's a TxDOT project. We have to work with TxDOT to make, I don't believe honestly that TxDOT likes to have these projects lasting 2, 3, 4 times longer than they should. I believe TxDOT wants to get the project done and move on. Right now, we're just one tiny phase of this expansion that's going on. If you go down 45 south to Galveston, as most of us do, you're going to see that this is a much bigger project. We're just one little part of it. And I don't believe TxDOT wants to keep this tied up forever. We need to be making sure that whenever TxDOT's doing their contracts, that they're putting something in their contract saying, hey, look, you have a time frame to do it. You need to have it done, or else we're going to penalize the final payment. They don't pay these contractors up front. The payments are done either in however they're done. They may be done in halves, quarters, whatever. But we're going to penalize you on the back end of this if you're not doing your job, albeit weather, some kind of natural issues, stuff like that. You can't penalize somebody for that. But failure to do their job and do it properly and do it in a timely fashion, you can penalize them. And we need to be looking at that.
Those contracts already have incentives laid into them. In fact, that was the way the state changed
incentives. Yes, but how about penalties?
Yeah, the penalties on the flip side of that.
Penalties is one thing.
Yeah, and it comes in, and then you have different contractors working on different phases, and it just because there seems like the right hand never really feels, or at least in the public perception, knows what the left hand's doing. Larissa, you wanted to finish up a thought before we'd gotten into this. Let me let you do that, and then answer the same question that I asked Sean, which was, okay, great, but how do we hold someone accountable when it's not really the city's contract? It affects the city. Sean said 120,000. It's one thing about the 120,000 residents in League City got to get from point A to point B. Let's talk of the other 2 million that go up and down 45 through the city on a regular basis.
Thanks, guys. So one of the things that I was going to say is that as far as transparency and alerting all of our citizens about the constant changes that are happening within the projects, a good idea may be something similar to that we do for disasters. So having maybe like a text update to where you sign up online and have like a texting traffic update, not to where it's a constant update on every single change that happens, but the changes that mostly affect our citizens. This is going to be shut down for longer than normal, and so that may be something that we might want to utilize for traffic, similar to that we do for disasters. And to your question, stating, well, what can we do to help push those along? I too agree with Sean's statement, because it's something that I've also experienced myself being in construction management. Typically, you have in a construction contract, most contracts have a construction duration period time, right? Which encompasses and takes into consideration the different phases of construction. And so at the end, if you have exceeded your time or your anticipated time limit without a change order, showing the reason for you exceeding the time, whether it's weather or what have you, then you will incur liquidated damages, and those are those penalties that Sean's talking about. Most contractors know that there are LDs that need to be paid for at the end if the certain phase or the certain job or a certain point of the job hasn't been reached by a certain time. Now, when it comes to TxDOT jobs, they do have a builder scorecard. And that's typically how it's done. And everybody takes that really serious, because that affects your money in your pocket and in your business. And so everybody wants to be the highest on the builder scorecard. And that's part of the incentive portion, right? And so they can go based off of their builder scorecard. But I agree with Sean, having those LDs or those liquidated damages put on there. But what I would like to see is some of those projects where our city has a hand in it. If our city has a hand in the management portion of it, or if our city has a hand even in the beginning, in the engineering portion of it, being able to control, we may not be able to control the TxDOT portion of it, other than following up and identifying delays and doing all those things. But those projects that we're collectively working with TxDOT, in conjunction with TxDOT on, if we have a hand in any other phase or portion of it, being able to ensure that our contract shows those LDs for let's say, for example, the engineering portion of it. If the engineering isn't completed by a certain amount of time, then maybe we need to have some LDs on there, or some type of something there for whatever portion that we have a hand in.
I think one of the things is making sure the city has a real seat at the table. I think y'all could both agree to that, and not.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
I'd like to say something here. So I can say TxDOT is the big boy on the block. They're going to do what
Sean froze up there, folks. That's why you hear him. He's trying to finish his sentence. Look out, let me get him back in at full speed and let him finish his thought here. Sorry for his internet connection there. Trouble. Another part of the infrastructure when it rains, we get these issues here. Hopefully, Sean, you can come back here shortly. We'll get him here. Hopefully started back up again. That's what sometimes here. And I don't want to get too much, but it'll give me the other follow-up question to have for you there. But Larissa, it's one thing to talk about those projects that TxDOT's involved in. Let's just talk about local roadways of what to be done there. There are roads throughout the community that, if you, I liken it to, Texas is an example of one that got worked on some time back. But what are the priority local roads as you see it that need to be worked on?
So I'm going to be quite honest with you. I'm not very knowledgeable in the priority local roads as a project as they stand today. But I do know that in my discussion with our staff and city manager that we did talk about some of the local roads, and that's usually where when I say local roads, I don't mean like local road improvements, but kind of like what's just happening. Those seem to
now we lost.
I'm sorry. Yes.
There we go.
I'm here. Those seem to have a shorter completion time frame, and they usually, most contractors fall within that completion time frame because the work is not as extensive as these TxDOT projects that have different phases in them. And so that's typically where we see most of our problems are not problems, but where we're having the issues are with projects that are that TxDOT has a hand in.
Yeah.
But our city,
there are plenty of city roads. Let me bring Sean back in now. Sean, it looks like I think you switched to your phone now.
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry.
It was a little more reliable for us there and before I get into the question there, you were in the middle of a thought before I swapped off to this other question. So let me give you a chance to finish up there, Sean.
Basically, what I want to say is TxDOT's a big boy on the block. They're going to do what they're going to do. We can talk to them. We can work with them. But for us to be able to say, we're going to tell you how this is going to be done. Yes, we can push them. We can negotiate with them, but they're going to do what they want to do. I don't believe that the city's portion is the one that's running behind. I believe it's the contractors and the subcontractors not doing their portion that's causing the major fallout, I guess, for lack of a better term, the major issue here. We have to work better with them and make sure that they understand our position and the situation that they're putting our citizens in when they're doing the stuff that they're doing.
And then while you're away there, I asked, we've talked a lot about projects that would be involved with, TxDOT there on the line, but there are a lot of road issues that are local, city streets and the like. For you, what are the local road projects that you think need to be tackled right now?
There's a couple right here by my area that need to be tackled that I brought up a while ago. Hobbs out to 517. That's going to be a major issue because it doesn't line up with Cemetery, and TxDOT does not like having offset offset intersections like that. Getting that situated to where Cemetery Road and Hobbs Road line up and be able to have a four-way traffic signal in that area is a major issue. Another major issue in this area right here where I live is Calder Road. Calder Road was expanded to three lanes from 96 all the way down to Cross Colony, and then it stopped. Calder Road needs to be finished all the way out to 517 in 3 lanes. Currently, we have the last traffic study through my little section here showed almost 8,000 cars a day coming through here. We've had issues with almost head-on collisions because of the curvy roads and people trying to turn into their the little sections along this roadway. These are two of the main ones. We're going to be looking at Bay Area Boulevard that needs to be extended down to 517 also. That would be another major north and south way of access and egress for our citizens on the west side. That's 3 of the projects right off the top of my head that pop out. And I know there's other projects that they're working on out there with the Westland Ranch subdivision that's coming in, and its extension down to 517 also. That's 4 different ones. There's a ton of them, and a lot of them affect the west side of town right now more than anything else. As we said before, we're 40% from being completed in this area of town, a doubling of our population within the next 15 years. That's just our area. We have another area that a lot of people don't know about, and a lot of people don't realize. League City has a large portion of land on the north side of Clear Creek. From Nass Road 1, we actually go all the way up to Nass Road 1, all the way down to Clear Creek, and all the way out to Bay Area Boulevard. That is a large section of land that still needs to be developed. The landing extension coming in, that's where I brought up having the road coming from the landing extension from Nass Road 1 over to Grissom would be a major thoroughfare for those citizens there also.
Right.
And we need to look at that and start planning for it.
Larissa, you had cut out there, Larissa. That's why we had you off screen there for a while. I think some folks are trying to either text or call you while you're in the middle of your. But again, are any other city roadways that you've looked at that need to be addressed, either west side, east side? Sean's pointed out about as we grow out, as a city, what needs to be addressed.
Well, some of the ones that Sean's pointed out are TxDOT projects. So we're just talking about the ones that the city is conducting. Is that, I mean,
No.
Is that not correct?
Yeah,
Sean?
most of them are city controlled.
Yes.
A lot of them are city controlled, but TxDOT does have a hand in some of those. And
some of it, but it's still the city's decision process.
So as far as with TxDOT, they have their construction schedule, and like we said before, they're going to be able to go on their construction schedule. As far as the city is concerned, the city is we have our contracts in place, and so they should have a lot of the liquidated damages on there in the city, as far as for the city projects. As far as TxDOT is concerned, we've been making a lot of efforts, working with Baytran and being able to stay connected in some of those efforts as a city. A lot of our council members are staying connected with Baytran on the TxDOT ones. Now, like I said, with the city ones, we can put whatever parameters we want to put on there. If we want to put liquidated damages on there, or our builder scorecard, or whatever it is to help the contractors stay within the time frame, then we can most certainly do that.
I'm glad you brought up Baytran. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
The 4 projects I brought up are not TxDOT projects. Those are all city-based projects. Calder Road, Hobbs Road, the Bay Area Boulevard extension, which would be developer built, the Westland Ranch. That's 4 of them.
And to be fair, Sean, her line was down at the time when you were.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah. That's why we didn't have her on screen.
Okay, I just want to make sure. The projects I talked about are all city-based projects. They're not TxDOT projects.
So we have handed it then.
Yeah, and and we've spent 33 minutes on this now, and I do want to move on. But Larissa brought up a really good point. Most of the communities in our area are part of Baytran. That is supposed to be the conduit organization that's supposed to be speaking on behalf of the communities, where the contractors and TxDOT and the cities are all getting together. I just wonder how effective it is right now. I as somebody who attends those meetings and the like, when I go to them, I see a lot of engineers that are engineering firms who get money on this stuff, and I hear them getting a lot, and they're sponsoring all the luncheons and the like. But is it time that maybe the cities have a little more say in those meetings and try to muscle up a little bit? Larissa, you first.
Yeah, absolutely. It's our responsibility to have a say in those meetings. We have to be the advocates for our city. As council members, we have to be able to be the voice for our citizens, for our constituents. And so it is absolutely necessary for us to be involved and to be there, to be present. And we do have some council members who are involved with Baytran and with those meetings. And so, but like I've said before, with a lot of council members moving on and moving to other endeavors, it's imperative that we have somebody who's going to be able to be present and be there and be the advocate for our cities, to hold them accountable, to speak up and say, hey, look, this is how it's affecting our city. This is how it's affecting our people. And this is how we're affected, to where we can't even leave our city if there's just a simple rainstorm.
All right. And to be fair, it's not only Baytran, but also HGAC, which the city does have representatives on each time, but it
Yes.
becomes like a bigger pie at that. Sean, the same question to you.
I have to agree with her. The city council has to be part of both HGAC, which they are, and Baytran. We have to be speaking for the citizens. We have to be speaking for our city. And we are the largest city in Galveston County, and we need to be that. We need to be able to use that and say, hey, look, we need these projects done. We need to start working on these projects, and we need your assistance. The project I brought up about Cemetery Road Hobbs, that's going to be for lack of a better term, a regional project, because that's going to have to coordinate with TxDOT, Galveston County, Dickinson, and League City. So we need to be into both these and make sure that our voices are being heard, and we're pushing to every angle we can to help our citizens.
Gotcha. Let me get into another topic now, and it's somewhat tied to, but always on the top of the head, and that's flood mitigation. And Sean, I'll start with you on this one. What priorities on flood prevention do you have if you're elected to council?
My priorities are, we need to step up the pace on these the $75 million in bonds that we passed for the projects that we already have on agendas. We need to make sure that we're stepping that up. We need to make sure that we start looking at what is the required attention that a developer is required to put in when he builds his development. He's adding new dirt. He's building up the land. We need to make sure that the ponds that he's having to put in are big enough to handle the floodwaters when they come back. Like I said before, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it happens. That's two of the things right there. One, we have to step up the pace on these projects. And then two, we have to make sure the developers are doing their end too.
Same question to you, Larissa.
So flood mitigation is my forte. Like I said before, I've worked in disaster recovery for 20 years. I agree with Sean that we have to be able to complete the bond projects. And I know that there are several current council members who are diligently working with, not only with local watersheds, but working with other municipalities, to be able to work through that, because we're League City. We all know that the water's going to flow from one end and go all the way down to the bay, right? And so being able to have that relationship with other municipalities is imperative for us. So yes, completing the bond projects, continuous efforts with other municipalities to make sure that not only we're all in agreement with the way the water flows, but also, as it goes hand in hand with, drainage and flood mitigation goes hand in hand with our traffic. Everything, those are the two big topics that we're having issues with. And then being able to identify and stay involved with HGAC, there are current funds. There are CDBG funds that were recently that they're trying to figure out how it's going to be allocated and what projects it needs to be allocated for. And so those are helpful in being able to get some of those, some new projects done, or things that will help with our flood mitigation, being able to identify what projects that those funds could be allocated to, and allocate those funds to that project, so that way we're keeping our costs low at the same time.
Sean, you brought up about the bond issue, so let me ask you, Larissa, what's a project that was in that bond referendum that you think needs to get going faster than the way you're seeing it right now?
I mean, so a lot of, and I don't want to, I hate to go back to the first issue that we were talking about with the text dot, but I guess that's just kind of what pains me is some of those text dot projects and widening the roads as they adapt with our growth as a city. I just want to really see a lot of those taken care of, so that I've been on the transportation and infrastructure committee meetings. I've been there. I've seen what's coming up in the pipeline, and some of those projects, I'd like to see, like I said, the ones that were on there with some of the text dot projects just completed.
Same for you on that one, Sean. What are your priorities that you think should be a priority? It just doesn't seem to be moving fast enough from the bond referendums, I should say.
I'm sorry, sir.
I said for the bond referendums of what they got passed, what projects are not moving fast enough in your mind?
In my opinion, right now, the ones that aren't moving fast enough are the flood mediation ones, the widening of the canals, the widening of the detention ponds that we have. I would like to throw another thing in here when we were talking about regional collaboration of things is, and I don't know if this has ever been looked at or not, but we may want to start looking at another way for the water to get from point A to point B, another canal system or something that helps us with the water. We have Dixon Bayou, we have Clear Creek. We need to start looking at the option of, is there a way to start diverting some of this water in a different direction, and not just out to Clear Lake or out to the bay or something, but another way to get the water across without flooding us out. But back to the bonds, we have to step up the pace. Whatever is blocking this, I've said this before and I'll say it again, whatever is the hurdle, whatever is blocking us from getting this done, we need to find it and we need to overcome it, and we need to move forward.
You talk about alternatives. Let me just ask this, because you saying that, Sean, former council member Greg Rippon talked about essentially would be a water tunnel underneath the city. He proposed as an idea of following 96 down to the bay, going through Kemah and the like, which would be an exorbitant project, but that would be one more way for the water to get to the bay. But that out of the box thinking of that, whether it's a massive regional retention or detention pond, depending on which system works better. And I know that's a subject you've dealt with a lot. Well, as I'm asking him that question, he drops out. There he is. He's back.
My phone's driving me nuts, guys.
Yeah, that's I understand it. What's the, let me put it this way. What's an out of the box idea that you think needs worth looking at that would help with flood mitigation in the community?
I've never heard of that one that you were just talking about, which it wouldn't be a bad idea, but I'm just talking about just a plain canal system.
Right.
Some kind of canal system, like diversion area or whatever, that helps us get the water from point A to point B. We talk about cleaning up our canals. In the interview, we talked about the desnagging and desilting and stuff of that of the canals. We talk about widening these canals. Some of these canals go through people's property. I know in Dickinson, basically the people's entire backyard is the canal. So we can widen them so much before we're actually taking homes. And I'm not big on wanting to take people's homes.
Right.
So we need to be looking at another avenue. We have lots of open land between the northwest area of our region to the southeast region, whether it's to the bay or out to the Gulf directly, to try and get the water going in a different direction rather than coming straight at us and then something happens and it floods the homes.
All right. Larissa, same question to you. What's kind of an out of the box idea? You talk a lot about, this kind of goes into your wheelhouse here of what you would like. What's an out of the box idea you'd like to see help with flood mitigation?
So an out of box idea that I would like to see is, I have family that live in the Woodlands. They have the Woodlands Waterway. And they use that as not only a detention pond, but they also use that as a way to let water flow through. And it's also a tourist kind of deal. They have these nice little boats, to little water taxis that take you down the way. And so, maybe utilizing something like that, maybe utilizing something such as a waterway of some sort, that acts as a detention pond, that has the water flowing, as it should, but that also brings in tourist interaction, which ultimately brings in funds into our general fund. I also want to touch base. I know that you mentioned about the underwater canals. I know that Harris County has implemented some underwater canals as well, and so,
And to be fair, that's where the idea Greg Rippon, when he was on council, that's where he got it from. To point out.
Yeah, for Harris County. And so maybe combining some of those efforts, so that water can flow. And I like the idea of having a multifunctional use for that, so that not only are we allowing the water flow, we're allowing for for commerce to come in and help fund our general fund for some of the other needs that we have in the city.
With that to talk right now, and I'll start with you on Larissa on this, and then Sean, you next. Taking into account, let's just we'll look ahead just one season ahead. Next summer, when the next hurricane season comes around, and this would be on infrastructure and on manpower for public safety. Is the city ready for another Harvey or Ike? Why or why not? And I'll start with you, Larissa.
Good Lord, we can't even get gas in our gas tanks. Never list another hurricane. And never list another hurricane like Ike. I don't believe we are. Just like I said earlier, just my general review of a pure storm, just a rainstorm we had the other day with our construction efforts, or with the current construction that's going on with our city. There were cars that had to get off of the roadways and get into higher ground. And so, and it all ties in, like I said, flood mitigation all ties into our current traffic projects and everything that we have going on, our growth. And that's why it is vital and it's imperative that we see those bond projects out to completion, because, and the way I like to describe it to folks and the way I see it is, it's like if you're putting in cube ice in a glass of water, ultimately that water is going to overflow, and that's similar to what could happen here if we don't get these projects taken care of. And that's why it's one of my priorities as a project manager to help implement that and see that through.
Same question to you, Sean. Next summer, let's say another Harvey or Ike makes its way here. Is the city ready, both in infrastructure side and first responder side?
On the first responder side, I will say 100% unequivocally yes. I believe the city is 100% ready for it. They've been through it once. They know what the pitfalls were, what the good points were, what the bad points were, and they've worked out a plan to be implemented if something like this was like Harvey or Ike was to happen again. They've been through it already. They know what they need to do and improve upon their action plans. The infrastructure mode, I believe we are ready, but I do believe that we have to continue and speed up these projects on these ponds. Again, we have less than a year, roughly, and then we're back in hurricane season. They are moving dirt. My ponds alone, they pulled out 10,000 cubic yards out of 3 ponds. They're working on another pond around the corner from me. They're already setting up to work on, I believe it's 2 more out of the 18 ponds in Bay County alone. Right. So I believe they're doing it. I just believe we need to step it up. We need to move a little faster. We need to get rid of the roadblocks that are hindering us in any way.
That gives in kind of another side of things. You talked about how much is left to be developed. A lot of decisions come before council, and Sean, I'll be starting you with this, and is that you have to make a decision on a housing development, commercial development, tax abatements, and the like. There's been a long-standing argument in League City, I would say the last 20 years for sure, of too much control by developers or too much control by the city over development? I asked y'all both this question when we had our one-on-ones, but I'll start with you, Sean. Is how do you find that balance between the development that the city could use for tax revenue, be able to pay for a lot of these projects, and making sure that it's something that doesn't come in where we see a Bay Ridge situation where the city takes over a property that just we know now just wasn't ready for flooding. But now the city's having to pay for that because the developer was short-sighted when it was done. Well, how do you balance that where someone can still develop, make some money off of the project, people can live safely, but also at the same time, not where you get a situation where 20 years down the line, you're writing a bigger check just to fix problems?
It's kind of what I was talking about earlier. When we work with the developers to plan out their subdivisions, I mean, the developers come in, they bring a plan to the city looks at it, they approve or deny it, or they send it back to them for corrections or whatever. So when we get these back, first of all, we need to make sure that whatever they're doing enough detention or retention. I really firmly believe that the city needs to increase the amount of detention required by the developers. Not to sound anti-developer, but the developers coming in here, making money and going down the road. They're moving on to their next project. That's their business. That is what they founded their business on. That's what they're going to continue their business on until whenever, from time on. We have to make sure that they're not coming in here and using our city in an inappropriate manner, and that we require them to do what needs to be done to prevent that from happening. If our detention, I think, is 60%, if memory serves me correct tonight, we need to step it up and go 70, 75%, and to where we don't have that happen in the future.
And that's a fair point. And Larissa, I'm going to roll this into as I do the follow-up with you on this too, is that a lot of times it is the development and then any retention or detention that's added in as part of that is based on the last thing or some the 100-year floodplain where, which used to be would only happen every 100 years. I think now it's safe to say, based on a lot of factors, we're seeing that like every 25 years for the 100-year flood that comes in there. So how do you, because listen, and you bring up a good point. You don't want to fault the developers on everything. They're here to make their money and move on, but it goes into, they're going to try to cut every expense that they have, just like you would in trying to do a project.
Exactly. It's a business.
How do you do it where you're not stuck with the bill, millions and $1 million bill later down the line where the taxpayers are paying for it, to make sure maybe you overbuild for mitigation and prevention? I'll start with you on that, Sean, then Larissa will let you come in on that.
Well, I'm sorry. It's pretty much the same answer. We have to work with these developers, and we have to be proactive in our thinking. Reactive spending is what causes us too many headaches, too many problems, and it hurts our bottom line. As a city government, we need to be taking in more money than we're putting out, or at minimum zeroing out. But we have to make sure that the developers are doing their portion so that in the end, we're not getting hit with it. We need to be bringing in the right type of development too. Not just every single thing that wants to come in. We need the right type of development. I do like some of the more major master plan communities, because there's more for us to work with them, because they're putting in the bigger parks and the bigger amenities as they're building these huge subdivisions. They're usually putting in more amenities. Well, we can work with them on the ponds issue and incorporate those ponds into the amenities. Right. If that makes sense what I'm saying.
Like such as parks and stuff like that. Parks that are built to be flood areas and everything.
Have those, instead of being level like our park here in Bay Colony West, it's actually lower than the area next to it. So in essence, it's a form of detention or retention area.
Which is what we're seeing in Harris County. The Harris County Flood Control District has made that parks now basically are built to be flooded. Larissa, same questions to you there. I know we covered a lot of ground, but it gives you a chance. But start, if you would, in how to on development, is that how do you as a city council set policy so that you're not writing a much bigger check 30 years from now, 25 years from now, when a flood comes through in a development that supposedly was built like be ready for it, but obviously it's not, like we've seen in other communities.
We're the largest city in Galveston County. And with that being said, it is our responsibility as council to hold these developers to a higher standard overall. Now, I know that because I'm in the construction business, that if I'm going to go and, if my company is going to submit a bid, or well, not my company, but, it's going to go submit a bid for a certain project, that we have to hold it to a higher standard, not only for ourselves, but for the city. And that's something that we have to hold them to. Now we have, whether it's adding more engineers and more surveys to be able to survey, have not only a pre-construction survey, but a mid-survey, and maybe add in another survey just to be sure that this isn't something that's going to affect us as a city going down the line, should something hit that we have to pay out more money for. So as League City, we already hold our even our businesses that are coming in, we hold them to a higher standard. It is our responsibility to hold the developers to a higher standard. It's also imperative that we stay in communication and constant communication with our developers to understand what the different phases and processes are that they're planning to do, and so that they also understand what our needs and our requirements are as a city.
And we've, as I said, I'd hope to keep our Q&A about 45 minutes. We've gone about 10 minutes over that. So I'm going to do this kind of rapid fire here to go on this, because these are some questions I asked y'all before, but together here. And I'll start with you, Larissa. Taxes and budget. Tax rate management, what's your priority in that quickly?
I want to keep our taxes low. We don't have time to, we cannot afford to have our taxes any higher. I want to be able to trim the financial waste and being able to use that towards things that we need, such as our safety, such as our first responders, being able to identify that and allocate it appropriately.
Identify right now one item you consider to be then as waste in the budget.
I don't want to say, I guess waste is kind of, such a harsh word, but one of the things that we can do is, for instance, our recent council just, we had funds that were allocated towards COVID funds that were just kind of hanging out there. And so being able to identify, and this is just an example, being able to identify those extra funds that maybe we've gotten through grants, maybe we've gotten through somewhere else that at the time were useful, but now, we've moved on since then, being able to allocate that, identify it and allocate it towards our needs as a growing community.
Same questions to you, Sean. Your priority when working on the tax rate if elected to council?
TJ, I believe in the no new revenue rate. Keep it the same. This city brings up the city budget. The city taxes only are a portion of our overall budget. And when it comes to all the money we have coming in, sales tax is a large portion of that. Other fees, a lot of the departments, their fees they charge, those fees are meant to fund the department or fund their work within the department. So we need to maintain the no new revenue rate. I'm sorry.
I know it's a tongue twister.
I get dry mouth and when I talk, so I'm sorry. We need to maintain the no new revenue rate. Period. End of story. We do need to look at our budgets. Now, some of these funds that come in, the COVID money, et cetera, they can only be spent on certain projects. So if we have the money, then we need to look at the projects we can spend it on. And do we have a deadline on when that money needs to go back to the federal government? Some of those funds, when they come in, they have to be spent by a certain time frame, or else we forfeit that money. So we need to look at that.
What's an area where the city is spending money you think could be spent less or should be cut, Sean?
Off the top of my head, TJ, I couldn't give you an honest answer on that. I do believe that we can use the other funds, but we need to make sure we're applying them appropriately to the different areas. But as far as a wasteful spending, I believe our council does a very good job at going over the budget and trimming that budget down to the bare bones.
And it gets into just to kind of, this is a budget philosophy type of approach. Larissa had mentioned about the COVID funds are sitting there. There's a lot of times you will hear people running for office always say, well, we should get more grants, or we should go for this funding or this funding. A lot of that, as you pointed out, Sean, it is short phased. I mean, it's like, okay, it's got to be spent in this much time, and of course hiring a position to take care of something like that, but then that position is still around even when that money isn't. And so let me ask you, starting with you, Sean, then to you, Larissa, where are you philosophically on the fact of, all right, we've got some money here, it's from a grant or whatever, we're going to spend it for this, of making sure that you don't create a budget expense that'll last beyond where those funds were?
No, I'm against doing that kind of stuff. If we hired somebody in based off the funds that we got, their employment, they have to understand from the very beginning, is contingent upon that project. Years ago, the city I worked in, they had been bringing in tax money that went into the general revenue fund that was supposed to be going to an entity itself. It wasn't supposed to be going general revenue. It was supposed to be to an entity. Our city budget, whenever the voters voted that tax down, was millions of dollars that they didn't have anymore. And it was causing, the city was looking at layoffs. They had to cut a lot of different things in order to fund those areas still. I do not want League City to get into that kind of boat where we hired this person, we're paying them however many dollars a year, and then all of a sudden we don't have that money anymore and we have to figure out a way to come up with it. No, I'm not in favor of that. So,
same question. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm done.
Same question to you, Larissa. This is more of a philosophical question, nothing that's right in front of you, but where do you stand on such things?
I agree with Sean. Hiring somebody because of grant money or grant funds that are available is not an approach that needs to be taken. In my opinion, grant money is kind of like, money that we're able to allocate and with assurance that we're going to be able to put this towards a certain project to either complete it or help push it along. Now, as far as any funding for our staff, we need to be sure that we have some kind of concrete funding there, which is typically, gone through our general fund. And in order to do that, we have to be able to identify ways to multiple ways to be able to consistently fund our general fund. And so, one of the cities that I looked at, because I've looked at some of the financials from other cities and kind of seeing how they fund their general fund. Baytown, for instance, Baytown funds their general fund. 60% of their fund is funded by the industrial district. Okay. And we fund our general fund from selling water, sales tax revenue, and what have you. Now, I'm not trying to say we should have a whole on plant here in League City, but maybe being able, since that portion of League City is, we saw 40% that's underdeveloped, maybe doing something similar to that as the Woodlands, to where they brought in corporate offices from Exxon, a corporate building from Exxon, who brought in employees, and are being able to contribute to that city. So something similar of that sort, maybe like a Tesla corporate office or an Exxon corporate office, and those type of buildings who can be able to give their part to our city and additional revenue into the general fund. And that's how we should go into deciding on staffing, being able to expand our staff.
Let me ask that, since you brought that up, and just real quick for both of you. Let me ask this because you talked about a corporate headquarters coming in or something like that. A lot of folks want to say that every city in Texas wants to bring in a corporate headquarters, but it almost comes down to that business saying, "What are you going to give me to come to your town?" Tax abatements, tax breaks, TERSs and the like. Where do you draw the line of what it takes there? Just less than 30 seconds from you, Larissa.
Having the contract up front, showing it up front. This is what we plan to offer. This is what we expect from you guys. We're in a great location. We're in between Houston and Galveston. We're in between the Bay. So it's ideal for them to come over here, and just putting that up front, throwing it all on the table up front without any question, and just keeping transparency with them.
And yes or no, are you in favor of giving tax abatements to a non-industrial type thing, like an office building?
It ultimately, I mean, it ultimately depends on what we have going on. We can only pull so much tax off of our people. We don't want to increase our taxes whatsoever for our people. And if we don't have the funds to do
yes
that,
or no? Are you in general favor? Okay. Sean, same questions to you there. Of that, if taken instead, I mean, I hear so many people why we didn't get Great Wolf Lodge in League City. Well, Webster offered a lot to get there, and that's a city that only has to live off its sales tax for the most part. And so there's a miss out on that. It's also between Houston and Galveston, as Larissa pointed out, but has some advantages there. But in League City, what's your philosophy on drawing in the right type of development on that? How much of the cow do you give away?
TJ, honestly, I'm not big on giving tax abatements. They're coming into the city. They're going to do business. They're going to make money in our city. Now, I do believe we have to look at some of this stuff, like the 380 agreements, on a case-by-case basis to make sure that the revenue they're bringing in, that whenever the 380 agreement's over, it's going to benefit our city. We need to be able to make our money back, is what I'm saying. Whatever money we're losing, we need to be able to make back in the end. I'm not big on them. Again, these people are coming in, they're building a business, and they're going to make money off of our citizens here in our city. So I know that's not a definitive answer for you, and I'm sorry,
right.
But I'm to be honest, I'm not in favor of them, but they do have to be looked at on a case-by-case basis.
And again, it's more philosophical approach versus when you get the real paper in front of you. 380 sound great. Nassau Bay, you can see it's worked there for them there. But I can tell you of other cities where 380 agreements have not worked at all because it's about how you manage it once it's in. And
I believe we've had some here in League City already.
All right, got two more questions for you on here. There's always concern. We hear about crime rates, big topic in the Harris County elections there and nationwide in League City. Sean, I'll start with you in this. How do you deal with battling crime? For the general part, League City is safe, but we're starting seeing some tick ups in some smaller crimes that would turn out to be bigger crimes down the line. And I'll start with you, Sean, on this. How to deal with that and how you support dealing with that across is when you got a police department, by the way, that has a lower percentage of officers per citizens compared to like size cities.
TJ, 100%. We have to invest more in our police department. These are the men and women that answer the call when we need them. And we are at the edge of the Galveston County, Harris County border, which means that the crime coming from Harris County and Galveston County coming down our way is going to come to us first. We have to invest in our police officers. 9 officers on patrol at any given time in this city is unacceptable numbers for a city of 120,000 people. Some of the people I talked to the other day on the other side of Crow Creek, they called the officers one time and they had a very long response time because how long it took them to get around from League City to their area. So we have to start investing more in our police officers and our police department. What that's going to take is money, and we're going to have to look at our budget and come up with it. It's just the way it is. We're going to have to be more competitive with our salaries. If we're not, we're going to start losing more officers. As I said before, we've already lost 3 to Baytown, and I know that for a fact. How much longer before we lose more? And we have to start being competitive with our neighboring cities.
And I talked to both of y'all of this in our 101 on that. Baytown comes up a lot there. And in full disclosure, Sean, you work over there. Not on the police side. I should
no.
But, League City was one of the first to offer incentives, sign-on bonuses, and the like in our region. Now everyone is kind of one-upping that, like, okay, a lateral transfer. If you're a sergeant in Texas City, now you can come to this city and be a sergeant again. That's a big deal, particularly when it comes to retirement plans and the like that. Larissa, same question to you, priorities on dealing with, getting public safety up there, particularly in the police department.
I agree with Sean. We don't have enough police presence, which has been one of the issues that our League City, our citizens have said that they wanted. They want more police presence on the streets. Just the other day, U45 Now let us know that there was somebody who was taking a lady's purse out in Kroger, and it just seems like more and more crime wants to seep into our suburbs. So yes, we do need more police presence, and we do need to make it competitive, and we do need to make it a desirable place to be in comparison to some of the other cities. So how do we do that is the main question, and Sean brings up, okay, well, with funds, it's going to take money to do that. Yeah, it will take money to do that, and it will take benefits, time off, and incentives that we can offer. And I know that Baytown comes up a lot, and which is why I've actually looked into the Baytown financials. And the reason why I met with Baytown elected officials and said, hey, how are you guys doing this? What's a way that you're able to do this? And they let me know, there's different ways that they're able to do this. And that's why it's imperative that we keep that communication with local municipalities to be able to kind of gather what they're doing as well, and being able to identify, like I said, that financial waste and allocate anything we can for the immediate need towards our first responders. In addition to that, working hand in hand with being able to get some of those developers in and continuously fund that general fund. They have more money in their general fund, but you know what? We're League City. We're stronger, and we can get it done.
We say that, but it's still, we only have 8 cops on the street at any given time and do that. So it comes down there, push and shove. I'm going to ask you, Larissa, and you, Sean, after this. Push comes to shove. Budget's up there. Funding a new park, hiring 3 new officers.
Hiring 3 new officers.
Sean?
Hands down, hiring their officers.
And that becomes the question, though, is that it becomes, when it comes down to a lot of times when these decisions are made in council, the priorities from election time to sitting there making the decisions will shift all of a sudden. I remember at a time when the city was talking about trying to hire more officers, and the big push for everyone showed up was they were mad because pool fees were going up and a new pool wasn't going to get built. That's who all showed up at the council meeting. So it becomes a tough task for there. But thank you both for bringing straight up on that, because it does come down to all it takes. Sean, you said it probably best, and Larissa, you echoed the same thing. It comes down to money, but it comes down to priorities when it's there. Last question. We're going to have a little fun with this since we are Thanksgiving week. And those of you who are watching this, we are replaying this right before early voting starts. So Thanksgiving's over when you see this question. So bear with us. And then, of course, you'll see it right before Election Day on the 6th. So we'll go with you first on this, Sean, on this question, because this is very, very important for this week. For Thanksgiving, you got a choice. This kind of sets up a philosophy. Like I said, budget priorities or Thanksgiving table priorities. One has to go. Green bean casserole or the yams and sweet potatoes? You first, Sean.
Yams and sweet potato. They got to go.
That got to go. All right.
How about you,
Larissa?
No, I'm saying green bean casserole. I like
That's got to go. Yeah, I lose out my family on that. All right. And do you call it dressing or stuffing? You, Larissa, then you, Sean.
We call it dressing.
Stuffing.
There you go. See, all right. So there we have contrast with both candidates, a difference of opinion on it. No, thanks for playing along with that. I like to, when we get around these holidays, these are serious subjects we talk about, but listen, you got to have some lighthearted moments too here too. All right. For folks that know, before we head on, we had Sean and Larissa pick a number between 1 and 10. I had already written it down. Larissa nailed it on the head, so she got to choose whether she went first or second for the closing argument, as we like, or the elevator speech. Reminded to you folks, early voting starts next Monday, and then Election Day, runoff for Election Day is the 6th of December. So when you're out and about, don't forget, because we had a really good turnout. I think we can all agree, a really good turnout for the election. Both of you getting 11,000 votes, more than almost 12,000 votes in both cases. Here just turned out, great turnout here there. So as I said, Larissa decided to go second. So Sean, you have up to 3 minutes, sir, to make your closing argument to the voters.
Yes, sir. Thank you, TJ. Again, I want to thank you for setting this up tonight. This allowing us to actually get out and speak to more of the citizens this way is extremely important. As I've always said, I am Sean Saunders, and I am running for League City Council position number 7. I have kept the steam rolling since Election Day, never letting up. This has been my priority. I want to represent the citizens in this city. I believe we have a great city. I believe that we can make it better. I've lived in League City for over 23 years. I've been a lifetime resident of Galveston County. My endorsements are all from local entities, the men and women who live here or live within the Galveston County area. I'm endorsed by the Galveston County Republican Party, but I'm also endorsed by the League City firefighters, police officers, and EMS associations. These are all endorsements I take very, very dear to my heart. They're very special to me because these are people who have talked amongst themselves and voted and believe that I am the best candidate to represent them and the other citizens in this great city of ours. I want to fight for the citizens. I want to fight to keep the taxes low. I want to make our city even better. I want to invest more in our fire and our police and our EMS because I want to make sure that League City stays one of the safest cities in all of Texas. I believe we can do it. I believe that if the citizens put their trust in me on this runoff election, I will not let them down. I will show them that we can, and we will become an even better city than we are now. My name is Sean Saunders. I am running for League City Council position number 7, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you. TJ, I lost you.
My fault. I actually turned off my microphone so you wouldn't hear me in the background. So my apologies. Sean,
Okay,
thanks a lot.
So you weren't laughing too hard.
No, that was my fault. That time around. That's see, y'all got it on tape. I admitted to a fault on there. So Sean, thank you and good luck. And
thank you.
I've been, by the way, and to both of you, I've enjoyed the time getting to know both of you. I knew Sean somewhat. Obviously, we see most of the time it's he and I in passing as we go along the way. All right, Larissa, up to 3 minutes now for you, ma'am, to make your pitch to the voters.
I want to thank everybody for giving me your trust and your support so far. The reason why I'm in this runoff today with Sean, who is also an amazing candidate. What I like to bring to the table is that I have 20 years of disaster recovery experience. I'm a construction project manager, and I want to be sure that those needs are met for us in the city. I also want to be sure, in my recent just in conversation overall throughout this whole election, I have loved speaking to each and every one of you and understanding your needs and your wants and your concerns. And I want to be able to bring that and advocate for you on our city council. To the small business owners, I hear you. I hear you whenever that traffic is keeping your business or slowing your business down. To the health and wellness expert who wants to be able to have those trails, I hear you. I want to be able to advocate for you. To the senior citizen who's worried about having to clutch her purse in at Kroger, and worried about her safety, I hear you, and I want to advocate for you. And that's what I feel like a city council position is to advocate for my family, for your family, for our kids, for our children. And that's most certainly what I want to do and what I want to bring. So I am Larissa Rameriz. I'm running for League City position number 7. You can check out some of my endorsements, but overall, I'm here for you, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. And remember me at voting time, December 6th.
This time I'll turn my mic back on. Thank you both for being on with us here tonight. Thank you all for watching. Again, early voting starts on next Monday, the 28th. You can get out and vote early. And then runoff election day is on December the 6th. And we will have there. And then one of you gets to join council. As I always say to candidates in the runoffs, one may win on this time around. But hope to see y'all both. As I said, we're going to have a new looking council in League City one way or another. Already one kind of familiar face selected, and then 2 other new faces elected along the way as well. And then we'll have a third from here. So thank y'all both for being on with us. We appreciate it for being on, and we appreciate everyone for coming on with us here tonight. Again, our election night coverage will be somewhat limited on the 6th, by the way. This is basically, we only have 2 races. We should point out that there is also a runoff election in Galveston Island for its school board position there, as both candidates tied exactly the same number of votes, 1,060 there to each on that. But we're not going to be having a forum on that one, but we will again be following this, and our updates will be online throughout the night of the 6th as well for this. And reminders, since that'll be afterwards, we hope to see both candidates out and about. Join us December 3rd, the Grand Night Parade of the Holiday in the Park. Angie Mertens and I will be emceeing that, as we always do. And that kicks off right in the middle of Holiday in the Park, which starts up on the 2nd. We look forward to seeing everyone out there for Holiday in the Park, and a great place for turnout there. And you can watch the Grand Night Parade here on I-45 now live as it happens. Sean, Larissa, thank y'all both for joining on to us, and thank you all for watching. I'm TJ Alds, I-45.